Over the course of this next 30 minutes, we're going to be taking a look back into the VH1 Classic archives at some of the many visits that Ronnie had with us here at the studio and some of the great stories and moments he shared with us. I remember talking to Ronnie just at the time he was diagnosed with his illness. I called him and I was so down and depressed about it. And the voice on the other end of the phone was anything but. He actually lifted me up in the course of the conversation. Here was a guy about to battle for his life, and he was making me feel better. That's Ronnie James Dio. Total class act, best people you meet. Right now, we'd like to share with you a little bit of one of the stories behind a Dio trademark, and that's this, or this, kind of known as the devil horns, throwing the horns, whatever it may be. But there's actually a larger story to that gesture that Ronnie created, and here he is to tell us about it from season 2 of That Metal Show. I noticed something, of course, when Ronnie came out and greeted the audience, and he's always so gracious with everybody that he meets, that you did, of course, this to the crowd.
What's
the
that?
Man who invented this. The metal horns.
Now, my grandmother, remember, my grandmother invented all this. It wasn't me. I just took it from, stole it from her, this poor little Italian woman. Then everybody thinks that I invented it. I mean, how could I be the only person on earth after all these thousands and thousands of years to come up with that?
Now, why did she do that?
Well, that was, I'm very Italian,
right.
And she would put that up when we would walk down the street as protection against, from the evil eye. Because we'd be walking, I'm just a little kid, and she'd see someone and go. This guy across the street was an all-Italian neighborhood, he knew, so he went like that, and off he went. And I just remember that all the time.
But you know, it's funny you mention that, because I'm half Italian, and growing up, my grandfather had a name for that. He would call it the Maloik.
The Maloik. That's it.
So that's where it came from.
That's exactly where it came from. Yeah, it's a very old superstition. Been around for thousands and thousands of years. When it came time to play, for some strange reason, and I'd done it really a lot longer ago than I thought, I just put this up for some reason, and I've gotten credit for it. And thank you for the credit.
It's deserved.
Yeah,
no, it's my
sure as hell ain't
grandmother.
Britney Spears that started it, and she shouldn't be doing it. Like many, I had always been a big fan of Ronnie James Dio and all the bands he was a member of. But until I actually worked with him and got to know him, I didn't realize the caliber of person he was. I mean, Dio is a guy that always had a two-way street of respect. He always showed so much respect back and appreciated anybody that supported what he did. I'll never forget, every time Dio would play in New York City, he'd always ask me to intro the band. Tremendous honor. Heaven and Hell playing at the theater at Madison Square Garden last year, and after the second song, from the stage to the entire audience, what does Ronnie do? He thanks me for my years of support and the great intro that night. I mean, just phenomenal. That's the type of guy we're talking about. His guitar player, Doug Aldridge, told me that when they would travel on the road, where everyone would kind of rush through the lobby and get in the van to get to the gig, Ronnie would often be the last guy in the van. Where was he? Busy holding the door for people to get out of the hotel.
I just came to that realization very early that you must be part of that, those people who put you there, and they are the ones. So I try to do all those things. Singing again has not been a problem for me. Performing is not a problem either. But it's again staying grounded and letting people know that you are, just like they are. They like you better that way, I think. So when singing became the thing that I had to do, because I never wanted to be a singer. I just wanted to be a musician. I started as a trumpet player at 5 years old, and that's all I wanted to do was play classical music and not do that. But I heard rock and roll, fell in love with it right away, and wanted to be part of a band.
Here's Neon Nights from the first Black Sabbath album to feature Ronnie James Dio on vocals, and the first one I ever bought, the classic Heaven and Hell. So much more still to come as we continue to celebrate the memory of the great Ronnie James Dio. This is dedicated to Dio. Back, I'm Eddie Trunk, and this is dedicated to Dio. What we have for you right now is something real special. Ronnie, along with his Heaven and Hell bandmate Geezer Butler, stopped by the That Metal Show set in season 2, and here's some stuff you didn't see from that show.
Another story about him being a good guy. We have a mutual friend, Rudy Sars, that plays with you in the band. And you were going to come out to one of my shows in L.A., and Rudy goes, I think Ronnie might come to the show. And I'm like, wow, that'd be cool. The next day, I got a phone call. He goes, hey, is this Jim? I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's Ronnie James Dio. He's like, I just want to let you know I can't come to the show. And I thought it was one of my friends pulling a prank. So I'm not going to let him get on me. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, no problem. He goes, no, seriously, I wanted to come out. I'm like, look, I'm playing my dog. I got to go. Because I thought it was like Craig Gass, one of my buddies, making a joke. So I got to go. Sorry. He's like, all right, hopefully I'll see you next time. And I hung up. And I'm like, that was one of my friends playing a prank. And Craig Gass calls me back, or Rudy goes, did Ronnie just call you? I go, that was Ronnie. I can't believe I blew him off. I felt so bad, and I wanted to call you back.
I forgive you, Jimmy.
You called me on a private number, so I couldn't call you back.
That's all right.
He's not.
But no, that was so cool that he actually called to say he couldn't make the show.
It's because I didn't want you to, give my number to Eddie.
That's something I think is interesting to our audiences. Ronnie's a huge sports fan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Giants?
Giants, Knicks, Rangers.
Wow.
Anybody who's, from any New York team, because I grew up with them all, being from New York and myself. And I've just carried that on, even, in the bad times when the Yankees weren't winning anything, kind of like right now. But it was just part of my upbringing, really. And it's something that I just really hold dear. I love sports. I love athletics. I think great athletes are like great musicians. You really have to be dedicated. You have to suffer a lot to really be good at it. And you get the adulation of people who you probably don't deserve it at the end of the day. But like athletes, I can really equate with them. And when I see that kind of dedication, it makes me want to be more dedicated. So I live a lot of my life through sports and through athletics, and write a lot of songs while sporting events are on. I've written tons of songs while watching basketball games. There's no music.
So you
Nothing
take
gets in my
steroids
way.
too? You
It's
take
just,
steroids? You take after the sports guys?
I took steroids today, but Geezer gave them to me.
Geezer?
Yeah, Geezer gave them to me.
Ronnie, is there any specific songs you could tell us that you actually wrote while watching a sporting event?
Most of them.
Wow.
Yeah, Holy Diver. Don't Talk to Strangers, wrote those two.
Stand Up and Shout, I would think, right?
No, Stand Up and Shout. We were in up in the mountains in where we did the album at Caribou Ranch, and so I wrote that up there. Not that one. There were no sports on at that point. But most of them. Wow. Yeah, most of them.
You wrote Touchdown, didn't you?
That's on the new record.
I can attest to Ronnie's fanaticism for sports, because we're both big New York Giants fans, and we went to England a few years ago to interview. I went there to interview Ronnie for VH1 Classic, and Monday Night Football was on, and in England it goes off at something like 3 a.m. And Ronnie and I are at the bar having a couple drinks, and I'm just nodding off, and he's going, "You got to stay with it. The football game's coming on soon." And as big of a Giants fan I couldn't make it. I fell asleep. Next morning, woke up, Ronnie had the score and all the stats for me.
Absolutely.
And so you were...
Well, Geezer's the same way, too, with his team, with English football, or soccer as we know it here. He would be up at any time to watch his team, Aston Villa, play, would you not?
Yes.
I mean, it's just dedication.
Coming up next, from 1983, the title track from the first ever Dio album, Holy Diver. Now, this was such an important period for Ronnie because he was coming out of two major bands, Rainbow, and most recently at the time, Black Sabbath. First time a band would just bear his name, Dio, and he put together a great lineup for it, including a then unknown Vivian Campbell on guitar, Jimmy Bain on bass, and Vinny Appice on drums. It was also the first time that Ronnie would ever produce a record, and listen to how great it still sounds. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Eddie Trunk, and this is dedicated to Dio. Now, everybody knows that Ronnie James Dio was an incredible singer and a great, great musician, but he was equally a very charitable man, very giving. No more proof is needed than in the mid-'80s when Dio put together the heavy metal charity all-star track Stars from the band Hearing Aid. It was obvious the respect Ronnie had from his fellow musicians. All he had to do was pick up the phone, and they came.
This project took place in the minds of two people first. That was our bass player, Jimmy Bain, and the guitar player in Dio as well, Vivian Campbell. And it came about because of a radiothon that the station KLOS held for 2 days in Los Angeles. And we all took part in it. Jimmy and Viv, in particular, had gone to the station and noticed the lack of people representing our genre of music, our kind of stuff. After you stop listening to this record, to what I say, people will still be starving, and only you can change it. So if this is the vehicle to make you think and to make you help another human being, then so be it. We've done our part. Now we should all continue to do our parts forever.
In his many decades in the music industry, Ronnie James Dio had really seen it all the highs and all the lows, but he never lost a great amount of respect for his audience or forgot where he came from, as proven by this classic clip from the mid-'80s when Dio was an arena act.
Our attitude is that we have people out there who have been loyal not only to this band since 1983, but to me since 1975, from Rainbow to Sabbath, and I want to repay those people for it. They've stuck with me through the closet version of heavy metal, to the resurgence of heavy metal, to back again to the death of heavy metal, back to the resurgence of heavy metal, and you can see where I'm going. Heavy metal, rock and roll is always going to be with us. Its death has been spelled out day after day, year after year, and it's never going to die because it's such a free, wonderful thing. So I want to just be sure that I repay the people who have allowed me and this band and all the bands I've been in to do this, to speak to you, to speak to the people I'm speaking to at the moment. It's my way of saying thanks for allowing me to do what I love. I'm the luckiest person in the world. I get to do what I love every day of my life, and isn't that wonderful? That's my dream come true, so I just want to pay it back.
Well, we've reached the end of Dedicated to Dio, but obviously we haven't even come close to scratching the surface of the legacy of this man, and his music, as cliche as it is in the case of Dio, truly will live on. Whether you were a fan of Rainbow, Elf, Black Sabbath, Dio, Heaven and Hell, whatever you want to call it, if Ronnie was on it, it always had a certain degree of class. And really, class is the key word when you're speaking about the man himself, something I hope came across in this half-hour special. I thank you for watching, and I thank Ronnie James Dio for being a great friend to me for many, many years, and all the great music he gave me as a fan. He will truly, truly be missed. I'm going to leave you with the title track from the second album from Black Sabbath featuring Dio on vocals. Here's The Mob Rules.
All the things that have happened to me in my life have been there for a reason. I wouldn't change anything. I've been, a very blessed person. Been very happy in my life. Of course, I've had my dismal moments, as everyone does, but again, I try not to dwell upon those. That's not going to change anything. So again, I've been a very, very happy person. I have no regrets about anything, and I wouldn't change anything in my life. I would carry on and do exactly the same thing.